Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Thank you so much for joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it very, very much. You know, we always like to turn to the people who are helping to make some good decisions, people that we've elected to be able to make those kinds of decisions. Welcome Darrin Guidry back to the program. And I get to say Chairman Darrin Guidry back to the program. How's it going, Darrin?
It is going fine, and let me tell you, as being an elected official and having to serve as an elected official, it's good being able to talk to a social worker because sometimes we need you guys.
Well, you know, it's always good to have Jessica around, right?
That's it, Jessica.
And that's a good thing.
She keeps us sane.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's always good to have outside counsel as well, we realize. And so that's a really good thing. But Darrin, let's talk a little bit about being chairman and kind of how that's kind of come for you and how that feels.
You know, this is the second year I've served as chairman, and Martin and I got together this year to try to do these items, to kind of go over some of our agenda items that we do. The chairman is in charge of the agenda as far as to coordinate and make sure everything on our agenda, you know, kind of fits what needs to be, and to kind of keep the meetings flowing. You know,
you got to keep you got to keep up with time, right? You got to make sure your timing is good.
You know, and there's always pressures as a chairman. There's always pressure on us of should we be discussing this item, or should we be discussing, you know, is this necessary? So what we did recently, in order to so that I don't have to make that decision, is we started putting on discussion items, motion to discuss, instead of discussion. So that way, me as a chairman, I'm not picking and choosing what's discussed and what's not. It's voted on by the council before we discuss it. And then if the council decides that it's not right for our agenda, then it won't be discussed. But that way, you know, I'm trying to take the chairman, because I have to work with all of our 9 council members. And so sometimes you get a tough call about whether an item is legal to discuss, because sometimes, you know, legal items and items regarding personnel, employees, you know, you can't discuss them in an open format.
Right. Some of those have to be closed discussions.
Exactly.
And so it's good to have that odd number, right, to make sure that those motions go through. And, you know, hey, this was a 5-4 decision about whether or not we discuss that or not.
You know, one thing one thing different about the council in regards to the procedures that we use, which is Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order procedure says a council chairman only votes in case of a tie.
Right.
But our home rule charter says that the chairman is a voting member. So what that means is, technically, I as a chairman can vote to create a tie, which would then kill a measure.
Right.
Which in a normal meeting under Robert's Rules, you could not do that.
Couldn't do that, right. And I knew that there was something interesting about the number and about how we do that.
So if it's a 4-3 vote, it would pass. But if I, as a chairman, choose to vote for the 3, it becomes 4-4 and it fails.
It fails. And so those are just some of the things on the inside that people don't always know or don't always think about. And it's good that we have that. And I knew this was kind of the second year, but it's really good that you've kind of put some things in place that say, hey, look, we're a group. Let's look and vote on these things and talk about these things before we go into session, so we're a little better prepared.
And you know, I'm really honored that, you know, my fellow council members have trusted me with this for the last year and a half through the end of this year.
Yeah.
I told them they have to find somebody else for January 1, though, because it is a lot of work.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so many more things to do, right? It's not just being a councilman, which is an honor, like you say, but it's also a lot.
And you know, the chairman is also the point of contact with staff, because we have our own staff that is separate and apart from administration.
Right.
So they work for the council. So in essence, they have 9 bosses. So the chairman is the one that kind of funnels the information and kind of helps, you know, represent staff and represent council.
Right.
So there's no issues
in those
there.
matters. So speaking of, let's talk about some of the things that are actually on the agenda that's going to be something important that y'all are going to be discussing.
Coming up on our agenda, this is the time of year that we set some of the tax rates that are going to be charged for next year, for 2023. Of course, 2022 was set the previous year.
Right.
And so in some cases, you'll find that, well, millages, sometimes when you vote, you will vote to approve, let's say, a 5 mil tax. And then for 10 years. And let's say after 2 years, because of appraisals, assessments increasing, you're collecting a little extra money. So a government can choose to either take the money or take the millage. What that means is, let's say 5 mills now collects, let's say 5 mills collected $100,000, just use a number.
Okay.
And let's say because of reassessment, it now is $110,000. The government can either agree to accept the $110,000 and keep it at that rate, which would lower the millage.
Right.
Or they could choose to keep the 5 mills, which may collect 120.
Right.
And so that's something that we have to, it's called a roll forward.
Roll forward, right.
And then when at the end of 10 years, when it's renewed, it gets very complicated. But
Right.
I can explain a little more after the break.
And that's a good idea. I appreciate that because, we want to understand some of the things y'all are voting on, and I know they get complex, and there's always lots of things that are happening and changing, and we'll talk about that and a whole lot more. So, Darrin, we appreciate your time. We were talking a little bit about the millage and some of these decisions that you have to make, and some of these are just because of the situation that we're in and how prices affect our area and some of the decisions that the council has to make because of that.
No doubt. And of course, most taxes are voted on by the public,
Right.
And they're for a 10-year period. At the end of the time, they have to renew them or not renew them.
Right.
But however, the state of Louisiana, when they set up the system that creates municipalities and parishes and such, they created a funding mechanism for parishes and cities, and that funding mechanism is called an alimony tax.
Okay.
So this is a tax that was created to basically fund the general operations of governments, and it was set by the legislature. It wasn't voted on. So, and they call it alimony. I'm not exactly sure why the word.
It's governmental alimony, if you will, instead of personal.
Exactly, it's governmental alimony, and
Okay.
and there's a alimony inside the city limits,
Okay.
and there's alimony outside the city limits.
All right.
Now it's set at 1.51 mils,
Okay.
and I mentioned to you, if assessments go up,
Right.
you can choose to keep the dollar amount and lower your millage.
Right.
Well, we did that with our alimony 2 years ago. We lowered it to 1.49.
Okay.
And we were able to do that for 2 years
Okay.
before we lose the 1.51.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
we're making there's going to be an adjustment on Wednesday night to go back to the 1.51 so we don't lose it.
Right.
And it's just we're talking about pennies, but still, it looks like it's a tax increase, and it's not.
And it really isn't.
It really isn't, but it's complicated.
Right.
And
And it's just adjustment to the alimony.
and I'm not sure where the discussion's going to go and where the
Right.
council's going to vote, but
Right.
it is on our agenda to discuss.
Okay.
We do have, getting off of taxes, and getting to some more, positive things that people like, and that is our kids and the accomplishments of our kids. We do have on our agenda, by the way, to recognize the Vanderbilt Indoor Percussion Group, which placed first in their region in the state competition. My granddaughter, who my wife and I raise, we were very involved in indoor percussion up until a couple of years ago, so I'm very familiar with this and
Myself.
what these guys do.
Right.
And it is like a sport.
It absolutely is.
And so these guys are going to be recognized at our council meeting.
Okay.
And I guess you're aware, on Saturday or Sunday, we recognized some of the other sports that won state championship, including South Terrebonne, Ellender. We recognize as the Vanderbilt, and I think Houma Christian even had a powerlifting powerlifter who placed in the state, and so we were able to recognize them. We had hoped to have a parade, and we had it all planned. And then on Friday, when we had the final meeting to discuss it, the weather was somewhat questionable, and they predicted not only rain but the potential for lightning. And we just said, for the kids, we can't. No. This is not like Mardi Gras. We need to be extra cautious. And so we just decided there was no way that we could risk it on Sunday.
And do a parade.
And so we chose to do it in the Civic Center. Mr. Dean Schwest, who runs the Civic Center, was gracious enough to open up, that facility, and I had it already set up for graduation. And I do want to thank a few people, by the way, who we didn't get a chance to thank, and that is Mr. Brian Bunn, who has Lumiere Restaurants. He provided some food for the kids after they won. And then Mr. Tommy Urisco at Downtown Joe's provided some beverages. And so I wanted to thank those guys because, they need to be thanked for their help. And, of course, Councilman Steve Trosclair is the one I want to thank because he did the major legwork on that.
To put it together.
I helped him, but he's the one who spearheaded it, and I can't say enough. The hours he put in at the last minute to try to pull that off is amazing. And
look, we talk about it all the time. Weather very often will affect outdoor venues so very often. And when it comes to lightning, we know we have to avoid those issues. And so great choice, by the way, and still be able to celebrate that. We did it indoors, but still a parade of champions. And a lot of champions in our area, some unprecedented wins. And so really exciting, especially at a time when I think we need it the most, Darrin.
And I think the ones who won in baseball can relate to lightning because they've been called off the fields many times as a result of lightning within the area. So I think the kids could relate, and I can only imagine they're disappointed for not being able to parade. But we're actually discussing the idea of making this an annual event.
No kidding.
And perhaps celebrate all the schools in the accomplishments, not necessarily just the people who win state, but
right. Because quite frankly, we need to be able to celebrate those things. We talk about it all the time, especially with kids. When they have something, anything, we want to celebrate those little wins. Those are little short-term goals for them. When they achieve something great, we need to celebrate that. It helps for them and down the road with their greatness, right?
Exactly.
All about the kids. And so much like you, my son was in indoor percussion. And in fact, one of his classmates who was in indoor percussion with him actually was one of the teachers at Vanderbilt for a while with indoor percussion. So we appreciate all of those things and all those accolades. And so thank you for spending some time with us, sharing with us what's going on with the council, with some of the specifics of what you're doing, and especially being able to celebrate our parish, because that's what really it's about.
That's it. Thank you for having me. And if you get a chance, come out Wednesday night to our meetings.
Yeah. And there'll be some changes coming up. We'll talk to you next time about some of the positive changes there and what it looks like in the meetings.
That's great. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Darrin. All right, guys, that will do it for this particular segment. Don't go anywhere. A lot more Bayou time when we continue.